By the end of 2023, my brother has a place in Mexico, and we were there for Christmas, and we were sitting there and we were just celebrating that we had $5,000 in the bank. We had 5 units on the land and $5,000, and we were like, can you believe we got this far? Like, it was mind-blowing. I can't believe anybody wanted to come stay at Milk and Honey Ranch. And then my wife said, I think 2024 is going to be our year, because it's been so hard and such a grind and all of that. I think 2024 is our year. And then the 8th of January, she was in a major car accident, and I was like, liar.
Welcome to the Our Family Invest podcast, where we explore what happens when family, purpose, and entrepreneurship align. I'm Mike, a former Maui firefighter who reached financial freedom in just 5 years through real estate investing.
And I'm Caroline, a Maui-based realtor here to educate, empower, and elevate my clients to make smart real estate moves, whether right here at home or through my nationwide network.
Together, we're chasing our full potential as individuals, as a couple, and as a family. We're here to build a life that matters. And each week we share the stories of couples who inspire us to love harder, dream bigger, and grow bolder. So join us and let's learn, share, and grow together. Today we're here with Brent and Daniela Phillips, a couple who have accidentally built a multi-million-dollar business in just 3 years. And looking at it now, you may assume it was all part of a master plan, but it wasn't. It was survival. It was faith. It was doing the next right thing when everything fell apart. Now, this is the story of losing everything overnight, betting on what you still had left, walking through unimaginable family trauma, and somehow building a multi-million-dollar business without ever setting out to do that. Today's conversation is about vision, pressure, marriage, faith, and what happens when you refuse to quit even when the math says you probably should. Guys, I'm super excited for this episode, but before we jump in, I want to get to know the two of you first. But here's the thing, I want you to introduce each other. So Daniela, why don't you tell us a little bit about Brent, and then Brent, maybe you can peel back the onion on Daniela for us.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Well, Brent is a master entrepreneur. He's a mastermind. He is a visionary. He is an incredible provider for his family, but also for other people in terms of jobs and things like that. He is a great businessman. But first and foremost, he is a loving husband, and he takes incredible care of his family.
I love it.
Thank you, my wife.
Yeah.
Yes, and my wife is the most stable, content woman you'll ever meet. Just easygoing with everything I've put her through, with the ups and downs and changes. She's always been the most unbelievable support, and in my corner. She's a fantastic mother, and she keeps our family healthy as well. You know, I'd be eating KFC and stuff if it wasn't for her.
I love it. How did you two meet, and what was your first date like?
So we actually met in church. I saw her. We were in a big church, and I saw her. She didn't notice me. I didn't stand out of the crowd. But I was very, very shy, like cripplingly shy. That you would think I'm exaggerating now, but it's the truth. And when we eventually did go on a date, it was pretty awkward. Like just sitting, like, one of those where you're like looking around, and we weren't smitten with each other in the beginning. And then I fell for her very hard. And she did not fall for me. It was a very slow developing relationship. Hey, what would you say?
Yeah, it's true. Our first date was nothing enthralling, I think, for either of us. But yet, we went on a second date, and we went on a third date, and he did fall for me. But to my defense, I was 18. And so for me, him falling for me was a little overwhelming. And I was like, hang on a sec. Yeah. So I called it off, but it wasn't too long after that. I was like, that was silly. Like, what's my fear?
And now 20 years married.
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
We have a similar story, and also
I was smitten early.
Yeah.
She was not.
Relatable.
That's great.
So, okay, you guys are in Houston, Texas, or Austin, in between Houston and Austin. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Where
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Bluebell ice cream.
Yes.
Actually, yes, we
That's
have.
one of my grandpa's favorites.
Yeah.
So we right by the factory, Bluebell.
Wow.
Okay. So is that where the Texas accent comes from that you guys have there?
Yeah, deep
Yeah.
southern Texas accent. South Africa, a little more south, but born and raised in South Africa. I came across when I was like 22. And then I flew back and married Daniela. So we had met in South Africa, and then I left. And then I went back to get her. And so I imported her, and it was a great choice.
Amazing.
I bet that one never gets old, Daniela.
And so Brent, you were in tech, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you were quite the entrepreneur, and you built businesses that were acquired. It sounds like you helped your brother build a business too. Like, can you take us into what you did?
So I've always loved software engineering. As far back, I never struggled with what I wanted to do at university and all of that. And then my brothers, so I had built a couple businesses in Colorado, and then my wife and I actually left, and we actually moved back to South Africa to be missionaries. And my niece had a stroke at like a few days old. And this led my brother on a whole journey of trying to figure out how to help his daughter, but also realizing there's so many other people who need help where the doctors just don't know what to do. So he actually asked me to come back to the States to build the software for this business, which was a online medical second opinion, which now, post-COVID, like there's all the telemedicine and everything like that. But when we started this, there was actually no way to talk to a specialist. You didn't have all the tools and these kinds of video conferencing. And so, I built the platform, and he was the business mind of it. And, we got to help a ton of people.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really good. And then, so you built, is this the same business that was acquired, or is this a different one that you built with your brother?
Same business that was acquired. So, 10 years, which is, not a long time when for a business, but we built it from the ground up. 10 years it was acquired. And at the time when it was acquired, I'd never had wealth in America. We never went hungry, but, we weren't exactly, I was driving a smart car, if that tells you, our level of wealth. So.
Amazing.
And, after selling that business, I never had to work again for the rest of my life. It was the weirdest, most wonderful feeling. Also wondering if this was a dream, but as you read, that was a dream, and we had to wake up.
It didn't last.
It didn't last.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. Like what happened? Because I know you said that you got a lot of shares of the acquiring company, right? But then how did that all fall apart?
Yeah. So when they bought our company, I think they bought us at like $60 a share or something like that. And they paid us some in cash, and then the rest were shares in a lockup period, which is, very typical. Mm-hmm. And this was a public company. And anyway, so I had used the cash to buy this ranch. And so, we owned the land, but all the building and everything like that, I was projecting on when these shares would be available and I could sell them. And I went to sleep with them at $60 a share, and I woke up with them at, $3 a share.
Oh my gosh.
And, it's one of the greatest things that have happened in my life. I think that moment was even more amazing than getting the money, because you don't have to have any character to get money. But you quickly find out who you are when you lose money, and you lose everything when you know what you're made of. And I had a lot of growing to do. I had to dig deep, to have two wives. Just one wife, two kids and a wife.
Glad we switched that around in America.
2 kids and a wife, and not even knowing how I'm going to pay the electric bill, which I know a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world have found themselves in that position, was the scariest thing I've ever had. Because even when you don't have a lot of money, there's at least some sort of consistency. But when you think you've got this and you open the closet and it's gone, it was an absolute shock.
What was the time frame and what triggered the shares to drop that drastically?
So they lost a major client that was like 80% of their business that wasn't expected. And so all their projections and everything. So I think everybody just panicked and just, it was one of those. So it wasn't corruption or, anything like that. They just lost a huge amount of their business overnight, which trickled down, to everything. And when I got the money, you always wonder how you're going to be. And I think my whole life we've had to trust God, and it's been a joy. I don't say that in a negative way, but like if we're going on vacation or whatever it is, it's not just like we're going to do this. It's like, okay, let's trust God for ideas and different things like that. And when I got the money, I started to just make my own decisions. And not in a prideful, arrogant way, but definitely I was like, God, thanks for getting me here. I've got it. This is great. Yeah. And when I lost the money, I ended up finding myself in a bush somewhere on the ranch. I just collapsed on the ground. I hadn't even woken Daniela up to tell her what had happened. And I wasn't sure if it was real or not. And the only prayer that I could pray that I felt was I could even worthy to pray was to just ask God to have mercy on me. Mm-hmm. I felt, even though it wasn't my fault what happened, I felt like I'd been given this incredible gift and I squandered it. I wasted it. I lost it. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity that I had and I lost it. And so I just asked God to have mercy on me and he has, he truly has.
Yeah. So, okay. So everything went downhill so fast. Daniela, what was your reaction when you found out?
Well, it's a lot less eventful because I've been blessed that Brent has always taken care of the family and the finances and all those kinds of things. And even though I worked, in the beginning part of our marriage, and obviously once we had kids and things like that, I did work. And then since we moved, I've kind of just haven't worked a whole lot.
Well, I mean, you work on Amazon, like type it in, shop it in.
Those are skills. Don't discount those skills.
So it wasn't ever a stress for me like it was for Brent. Both the positives and the negatives, they weren't as, crazy out there, if that makes sense. Both when we got the money as well as when we lost it. Like neither of those were big events in my life. Yeah. But obviously, like he mentioned, when he did tell me he lost the money, there was a part of me that I almost giggled because I was like, this is so the Lord this is just an avenue where the Lord is just going to get his full attention back again type of thing. And I just think the Lord is so gracious and he is so faithful. And, I knew that the Lord would take care of us one way or the other. I knew Brent would take care of us one way or the other, but, there was a confidence for me, knowing what Brent has done for us until now, but also more than that, just knowing God's character and knowing he doesn't, forsake us.
Yeah, for sure.
And it sounds like, Brent, like obviously you had the firsthand impact of that because you knew the gravity of it and because you're managing the financial side. Did it help to get you kind of onto the next step with that kind of support where she's just like, Brent, you've got this. Like, we're going to make it through it. I have no doubt.
Yeah, it means more than anything. And I always, when people ask like about the ranch, and Daniela's role and stuff like that, I say none of this would exist without her. Not because she was building it or anything like that, but for exactly what you just said.
Mhm.
That consistency of belief, her
Yeah.
believing in me makes me feel invincible. If
Mhm.
she was second, guessing me all the time and putting me down, and I've got enough of that in my own mind to have to
Right.
fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just trying to like put myself in your place right here. And I can imagine it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And you've got this ranch that you just spent all this money on, 54 acres, I think it is, right? And
And a plan.
well, you didn't have a plan to make this an Airbnb at the time. This was just going to be like
Your
family.
homestead.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Right?
Plan was for us it was really for us to learn gratefulness.
Mm.
One of the things I did identify with when we got the money is how quickly my kids became entitled. And I really didn't like it. Growing up in South Africa, I look at America with huge gratefulness. They don't have that because they were born here. They don't have that, like, we're so blessed to be here kind of thing. And so there was all of that creeping in. And so it really was a change of lifestyle to live here, that we could be part of the creation of growing our food and raising animals and all of that, not because we're preppers and we think we're going to, survive long at the end of the world. But I really believed if I could get my family and myself closer to agriculture, it would automatically impact our heart without me having to tell my kids these things. They're going to see it for themselves. And it's true. It worked. It worked amazingly well, but that was the plan. The one deviation that happened with the plan before losing the money was the war in the Ukraine, which was it ended up being a huge part of the story. And I knew a lot of people in Ukraine because of software. There's amazing developers in the Ukraine. And so when that happened, I converted our garage into a hotel. So that was not part of my original plan, but I converted the garage to the hotel and said to the guys, like, any of you who can get out here, I'll take care of you. Like, you and your families and whatever, come, don't worry about needing anything. Just show up and I'll feed you and that. Now, had I not done that, I don't think this plan could have evolved the way it did. Because I wouldn't have had money to build the hotel after everything got lost.
Right.
Sure.
So it was what I thought I was using to help other people's lives. God took that thing and saved ours, which is amazing. And it just goes, you live life to try to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it always comes back in a way you can't expect.
Yeah.
So where did the idea come from to make this a resort?
Yes. So a couple things, and one thing that made this easier, that some people might identify with, is when you have a lot of options, it's actually very stressful. If there's a lot of, many ways to skin a cat, which is a terrible saying, but it's actually very difficult. I've got a master's in software engineering, and that's always been where I've gone to get money. And I applied when all of this happened. I was working a bunch of jobs, trying to bring money in and everything like that. And then all those jobs just dried up like overnight. And I applied for about 40 jobs online, and I didn't even get a reply back. And I knew that this was God closing that door for the time being, because I'm a software engineer that has taken a company from zero to sale. I mean, that's a
big deal.
That's a huge achievement. I know every life cycle. I've been through multiple businesses. I've got great references, all of this stuff, and nobody would hire me. And so that's where I was like, okay, there's only one direction to go here. And that was incredibly helpful versus, I'm trying this and I'm keeping my foot there, and I only had one path, and that was forward. There was no other way to go. And I was very grateful that God pushed me into, that
The
path.
first Airbnb.
Yeah. And so we had this hotel, and I was like, okay, all I can do is I'm going to try Airbnb, which I knew nothing and felt very insecure about, opening up your home.
Also, just a quick side note: we say hotel. It's not like it's this huge.
No, it's a loft. It's a loft of a garage.
It's top of my garage, like three bedrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 or 8 people. So just
So-
to have some reference.
So I had high hope, but I had low expectation, kind of thing, because like we're in the middle of nowhere. I didn't think there was anything that special about what we had, but it was all we had. Like it has no windows, and it's like, well, people aren't going to want to rent it if they have no windows. Well, it's like, I don't have an option. It's like, this is what I have. This is all I have. You either like it or you don't like it. And I put it online September of 22. I'll never forget it. And it booked almost immediately. And I was like, what? And then it booked again and it booked again. And I noticed it was the only woman booking this Airbnb. And I was really nervous, and I didn't know why they were coming. And then this first lady showed up and it was so funny. Like, we baked cupcakes. We had bread for them. We were offering dinner. I was like, babes, guess what's dinner? Go make some dinner. Like, we're doing everything to make this as great as we can, because we're in the middle of nowhere, and we're a farm and we've got some animals and that. And they booked us because there was nowhere else to go, not because of who we were or anything like that. There's Round Top, which is about 15 minutes away from us. It's the biggest antique festival that happens twice a year. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about Round Top, and by God's genius design, we bought this ranch right next to Round Top. And so I said to the lady, why are you going? And she's like, Round Top. I'm like, what's a Round Top? And she's like, there was nowhere else to stay. You were the only place available. I was like, this is amazing. And so how these ladies really changed our lives was they booked for Round Top, but then they had such a good time, with my wife's cooking and our and our cupcakes, and that they brought their families back in the summer. So we
Wow.
got a double booking for every booking. And without that, we couldn't have made it, because the bank wouldn't lend us any money, and so what I was doing, then it was a risk. I didn't know. So you say, having built this resort, but as we were walking it out, we weren't building a resort. We were just like, okay, maybe we're adding another stay.
Yeah.
So then I built 3 more stays, and the builder that I worked with was so gracious that he let me carry $1 million debt.
Wow.
That's very gracious.
Yeah. And so I paid him that over almost 2 years.
Wow.
Wow.
So I was building units, and then money would come in, and I'd be able to pay a little bit over here. But I carried a huge debt with them. And,
Wow.
and I had multiple contractors like that who were just kind to me for no reason at all.
Wow.
And so
Can I get
had
their
that-
contact information after the show?
Yeah.
What is, I'm curious. So, like, what is your relationship with those builders and contractors now? Are you still working with them? And what was the nightly rate? Do you remember the nightly rate of your very first stay?
I think it was like $400 a night, but that was for sleeping 8 people.
Right.
Now that unit is like $1,100 a night. But obviously we have a lot more. But I think it was around $400 a night, which I was like, I don't know if somebody's going to pay $400 for an attic with no windows. But it was like, they have to pay this. Like, I need them to pay this.
Need it. Yeah.
This amount. And so we managed to build 3 more units. And by the end of 2023, I tell you, my brother has a place in Mexico, and we were there for Christmas, and we were sitting there, we were planning, we were just celebrating that we had $5,000 in the bank. Now, and we had 5 units. So we had 5 units on the land and $5,000. And we were like, can you believe we got this far? Like, Like it was mind blowing. I can't believe anybody wanted to come stay at Milk and Honey Ranch. What's wrong with these people? But thank you. And, it was amazing. And then, my wife said, I think 2024 is going to be our year because it's been so hard and such a grind and all of that. I think 2024 is our year. And then the 8th of January, she was in a major, car accident. And I was like, liar. And,
You're like, we just did this. And that was the anniversary was yesterday at this time of
yesterday,
recording.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So take us through that.
Yeah.
Because that, you guys, everything is kind of moving, up again.
You're starting to get the momentum.
And then car accident.
And reflecting on who I was as a person when my wife crashed compared to when the stock crashed. Night and day different. When the stock crashed, I thought I was going to die. I think I had a panic attack. I felt lost. I felt whatever. When I heard of my wife's accident, I immediately took shelter in God and just knew that this was going to be okay. I didn't know an outcome. I didn't know if she would live or anything. I knew this was going to be okay because we had seen God's unbelievable faithfulness, like from front row up close in ways that we could never have pulled off without his intervention. I got the call and, they didn't think she was going to live. And I went and I got the kids and I said, I'm going to tell you something, but I need you to not panic. And then I said, Mom's been in an accident and she's been taken to the hospital, and they immediately panicked. They didn't
heed you.
They didn't listen at all.
So they didn't have the same faith that you had.
We got to the hospital. Yeah. We got to the hospital and the sight that we walked into, I wasn't expecting. It was worse than I could have imagined. She was in such a bad way. And I mean, my son saw it and he was inconsolable. They already had a child psychologist and a chaplain in the room to prepare the family for her to die. And this chaplain was in the room, and shame. I knew why he was there. I knew what he was trying to do. I saw how he was trying to find the on-ramp, and I was very grateful and appreciative for him. But he felt shame. He was way out of his depth, and he kept trying. And eventually I just put my arm around him and I said, I'm so grateful for you that you do this and the way you love people. And I said, I got this. Like, it's going to be okay. I got this. And he was like, oh. Because, it was so bad. The situation in the natural was so bleak. Oh. And, that's when I posted on Facebook and I just said, look, I need you to help me fight for my wife's life in prayer. I believe we can win this. And people did. I don't know why. I don't know why people cared as much as they did, because there are tragedies every single day. Mm-hmm. Why they cared about this one, but I'm grateful. I don't know why. Yeah. But so many people picked up on the story. I mean, we had 7 million people following the story, for the like a 2-3 month period. And then I'd post the next day and I'd be like, she's not dead. Like, she made it through the night, but now they're saying she's a vegetable, So let's pray, for that. And then I'm like, hey, she's not a vegetable anymore. Now they're saying she's crippled and blind. So let's pray for that. And it was like the worst news. And then, praying for that. And then the next day, the best news. And then the next thing. And it just went from, it was like her lungs collapsed. Let's pray for that. Next day, lungs inflated. Now it's, it's this and this. And I think people, it put a lot of hope in people's hearts because they saw how dire the situation was. And yet each day there was something to hope for, even if it wasn't a complete, a complete thing. And I would say it was the worst and the greatest time of our lives going through that accident. There's stuff there that we have learned and has changed us forever that we could never have learned in a book. We couldn't have learned in a class. I mean, there's valleys that you walk through that change you forever, and I think for the better. Our marriage I've always been blessed with a wonderful marriage, but there's just there's something else now that is different.
Hey family, real quick. If you'd rather watch your content, head over to Our Family Invests on YouTube. You'll find this episode and all our episodes over there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your takeaways in the comments. Now, back to the show. How about relationship with your kids? Because they went through two big traumatic life changes, not to mention moving to the ranch, right? And changing that lifestyle too. So how did they transition, and how did you four grow closer as a family?
This was, I knew my response and attitude with them was so vital during this period. If I showed panic and woe and all of that, it would just melt them. And so I kept it very light, not dismissing the situation, but I made a ton of jokes. And, like if you go back and watch some of the videos and the things that I said during, I mean, it was hilarious, but people are like, oh, we're allowed to laugh at that.
Some people sent like hate comments.
Yeah, some people just
making light of some stuff, like in my defense, not that I needed it, but
like she completely lost her memory, so I made a lot of jokes, out of that.
Sorry.
But my thing was to them, and this is what I said to the kids. I said, what shows more faith in God? If we are moping and crying and does that show that we believe in God more? Or if we have joy, that we believe his goodness is going to shine through? I said, and that's why I choose to laugh, and that's why I choose to have fun. And that's why she thought the kids' names were Johannesburg and Austin. And my kids' names are Joshua and Jordan. And so I made a video and I said, and I sat the kids down and I said, look, mom thinks your names are, Johannesburg and Austin. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let you choose. Who wants to be Johannesburg? Raise your hand, and so, it was stuff like that. And, she didn't know we were married, so I made a lot of jokes about how, I proposed to her in the hospital and I said, I'll be your husband. And she's like, no, I'm waiting for someone else.
Oh my goodness.
And I value that time because the alternative would have done nothing.
Yeah.
So that joy, I think we learned that you can go through very hard, very real times, but you get to truly choose how you go through that season.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, that's a long answer to answer your question. The kids grew immensely. They went through some tough things. My daughter, in the beginning was very hard for her because she couldn't talk to her mom, and her mom was her best friend. And,
it was a tough transition, I think, for her because of that. Like Brent said, it was like even though my life wasn't lost, she lost her mom and she lost her best friend. And so it was a tough transition, but obviously having, their dad and just the stability of our home and people that love us and stuff like that, they both pulled through. And I think they both are incredibly mature for their age.
That came out mature.
Yeah. And I think, through all of that, at the end of the day, even it's been 2 years, but Geordie will say, our daughter will say, like, she really, I guess, turned to the Lord, and she has kind of developed her own specific relationship with the Lord, and she thrived in that. Our son is younger. I still think he's mature for his age, but he's also at the age where he's still figuring out his personhood and his life,
Yeah.
So, it looks a little different for both of them.
Yeah.
How old are the kids now, and how long was your recovery?
Joshua is 15 now and Jordan is 17.
Okay.
And yes, so my recovery, I don't remember the car accident, and I don't remember being in the hospital or the kids or anything like that. Once I started to recognize things and be familiar with things, I didn't realize that I didn't remember them until, before that. So I didn't qualify, I know who you are. Now in hindsight, I'm I should have told them, but I just, took it for granted because I knew who they were. When I did come home from the hospital, my home was familiar to me, but I didn't feel like I needed to announce it, But so that was, I think, so that I was in hospital for 9 days, which is miraculous from what I understand for a brain injury.
Yeah.
And
Crushed face, all sorts of stuff.
yeah. I guess given all my circumstances, that was miraculous. And then I came home for a few days, and then I went to a rehab facility in Austin for 2 weeks. They expected that I would need to be in rehab for the brain injury for 6 months.
Oh.
And I ended up being there for 2 weeks. And ever since then, I've been at home and I've done, exercises, and since then I've been to another facility, elsewhere and things like that. And Brent was really gracious in getting me a hyperbaric chamber at home. And so I've done things, but it's been mostly just kind of us research, or actually I say us, him researching our options and kind of putting them in place. And so,
and also, we had to work with the money that we had, so our insurance didn't pay for any of that. So that's why she was only in rehab for 2 weeks. A family friend stepped in and paid for her rehab. And that was very hard for me that I wasn't able to send my wife for rehab. Oh, it made me feel like garbage. And, but once again, you work with what you have and don't look at what others have. And this is what I have. I'm going to do the best with what I have.
I like that you were talking about, at the end of the year, you guys are all excited because you have 5 units and $5,000 in the bank. And then a week later, this accident essentially, obviously that wiped out more than $5,000 worth, right?
Yeah.
And I know you had an amazing, because I saw it on your Instagram, beautiful white McLaren that your brother gifted to you after the sale of the company.
Yeah.
And you had, it looked like you auctioned that off. Is that right?
Raffled it.
Yeah, I raffled it off, and people were so gracious once again. I got double the price for the car.
Good.
Amazing.
And that really took care of all the medical debts and everything. It was $500,000 in medical debts, and
Wow.
we paid it all off. I had just accepted that we were going to lose the ranch, and it was okay. I remember having this conversation with God, and I said, I just want to thank you for the opportunity that we had. This was after she was alive and everything. I said, we're going to move back into an apartment, and we're going to be happy because we've learned happiness. It's got nothing to do with circumstances, And I've never had God so interrupt my plans as that. The ranch grew 1,300% in bookings while we were still in the hospital with no marketing and no asking anybody anything. Our Instagram had nothing to do with the ranch at that period. If you scroll back, it's just posting about the stuff, the celebrations of what's happening with my wife. And people just on their own found the ranch and started booking.
Wow.
And those 5 units, they booked for a year and a half out.
Wow.
So we were meeting people a year and a half later that booked while she was in the hospital.
Incredible. What an incredible story. And I can imagine
and
that
provision.
it's like you don't want anyone to have to go through that situation, right? But the joy and the beauty that came out of it, from how the entire world just rallied around you and lifted you up. And so now, like, I imagine at that point, the ranch wasn't anywhere near what it is today. Like, this thing is beautiful. If people are listening and they haven't seen it, you got to go check out the website and the Instagram, because there's like a lake with jet skis and like a beautiful pool and mini cows and all. I mean, it's incredible how much of that was there at that point, and then how much of it was a vision of like, let's double down on this now.
Yes. So it was only after the accident that I realized that this is the will of God for our lives at this point, because I'd let go of the ranch, and I'm like, everything I wanted to achieve with my kids, we did. I love who they've become as people. They've learned gratefulness. We've learned to grow things. We can fix water pipes. Everything I wanted to achieve was done. And I was okay to let that chapter go. And when all those bookings came in, and they shouldn't have come in, this will be a case study in some university somewhere one day, and I was like, okay, this is what God wants us to do. And so I just started adding units, as many as I could as money came in. And so now we have 35 units.
Wow.
So at the time, I think we slept like 20 people at the ranch. We sleep like 145 people at the ranch now. We're busy completing our second swimming pool and this little a Wild West village that opens, in a couple months. And we've got like 7 mini cows now and a cafe. And I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable.
That is so
And
amazing.
I was explaining this to a guest, actually yesterday, to say, when I tell the story about what we've done, I am so fully aware that even if I did all the hard work and all the sacrifices and everything that I did, there's still not enough for this to just have worked automatically. A lot of people come here and they say they want to replicate this and ask me for my process and everything like that. And I say my process was desperation and trusting in God, because it's like say you go gamble and you throw a number 7 and it pays out 1,000 times, and you know that you threw those dice, but you had no control over how those dice were going to land. That's how this ranch feels. Yes, I threw the dice, but God in his kindness brought people to book and made our Instagram story show up, and people were, there's so many things that happened that it was out of our control.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. And I'm grateful that you had the energy you had around your wife and your kids. And when you come to that crossroads in choice, I do believe energy attracts energy. And if you had chosen to be moping and down, however that looked with your faith, that probably would have affected Daniela and, of course, your kids. So that was a leap of faith for you. And especially when you receive social media comments, they don't always land nicely. So, well done.
One person wrote that said, if your wife recovers, I hope she divorces you.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, one of the funniest videos I posted, so Daniela was all banged up, like crazy banged up. And I'm sitting in the hospital room and she's sitting there and she can barely talk and stuff. And I made a video and I said, hi, I'm Brent. And I like to party. And then I turned the camera on her and she's like, hi, I'm Daniela. I also like to party. But she's like eye closed and banged up and everything. I could not stop laughing. Oh, it was so funny. It was so funny. But
I love that. So, I'm curious because you have those pictures on your Instagram of Daniela and in the hospital with just a torn up face. What made you want to take that picture?
I think I knew that if I posted that, people would understand. If I wrote and said Daniela's in a desperate place. She needs prayer. My whole goal of that was to get my friends to pray. I never realized it would go to the people that didn't know as much as it did. This was about my online community saying, like, I need you and I need you now.
Yeah.
And so the motivation was just to rally around. There was nothing. If somebody gave me $1 million in that, it couldn't have saved her life. It had to be a divine intervention, to get her through that. The doctors, my dad, that's how my dad died. He had swelling on his brain. So I've been in that situation before. And they're telling me the same things they told me about my dad. They're going to have to cut open her skull and all of that. And I'd been there and I remember everything from and my dad didn't make it. And so I was like, no, I'm not, I will run down the street naked, to get attention for people to pray for my wife if that's what I need to do. It was like, I don't care kind of thing.
Yeah. So glad you went to Instagram instead of running down the street naked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for not posting that one.
I would have got more mean comments.
Oh my goodness. So I love that you are quite the visionary of seeing something of what it could be and just making that happen. And I'm curious because you've been on this roller coaster now a couple of times with really high highs and really low lows. And now, like, it seems like everything is up and to the right again. And I don't doubt that if something were to happen, and I certainly am going to pray that it doesn't, but if it does, that you would land on your feet and you would be happy and grateful for the experience. But let's say it keeps going up and to the right. What's next for you? What does 5 years from now look like?
It's such a great question, and I don't have an answer, for that. But it is something that we've spoken about, because I don't take for granted that I can just say in 5 years I'm going to be doing that. I felt very clear from God that I was to build this. And I haven't had the next, like, this passion in my heart of, like, this is the next step. And so until that comes, I'm continuing down the direction that I heard last. So now we'll work on making it easier on business processes, on operations and, all of those things and building it that way. As far as the land goes, we can't build any more buildings. We've exhausted our septic limits. You can only do 5,000 gallons a day. And I would never have dreamed in a million years that we would ever hit that number. We hit it. And so that's it. I've got, obviously the family, now that we stabilized financially, my thoughts are a lot of continuing to, develop my son, my daughter. I'm very proud of who she is, and she's off to college, and I feel very good about it. Very good. And so now I've got this moment with my son, and, I think that's where a lot of my energies are going to be. I want to travel with my wife and I want to do fun things with my boy. And, it's not as grand, but, that's where my heart is right now. Yeah.
I think we've also learned, given what we've been through, that while I think it's good to have goals, I think it's necessary, it's good to have vision. But I think so often we've learned that vision, especially when it relates to, like, things, it can change so quickly. And it's not in our hands. And so we have goals and like Brent described, but we also have learned to just hold everything really open-handed. And just trust the Lord and know that He is good and He is faithful, and to trust Him in that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping this up, but before I get into our final 4 questions that we like to ask all our guests, I do want to ask you, do you have any plans to buy that McLaren back at any point?
I would say no. I would not let him. It was like the police looked for him, even if he wasn't speeding or doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's just because of the style of the car. They were like, we got to get that guy.
I love police and grateful for them, but man, they gave me such a hard time with that car. It's I have thought about it, if we got to a financial place, but I think what made that so special was that I didn't buy it for myself. It was my brother who gave it to me, and I think that was more special than even the car. Even though the car was beautiful, because how many people do you know whose brother bought them a McLaren, versus
none.
Yeah.
Well, I hope my sister is listening.
Yeah.
Good luck on that one.
All right, you guys, let's start wrapping this up. I'm going to ask you these same questions because they help me kind of get a perspective of who you are as people. And I feel like I've really gotten to know you pretty well already, but I'm curious, who or what has inspired you most along your journey? And this could be a person, a book, a place, maybe someone you never even met.
I go first.
I feel like mine's never as interesting, but I would say my husband and the Bible.
Yeah.
It's I would say my mom, and why is because at when I was 2 years old, my dad kicked us out of the house in South Africa, and I never saw that woman panic. She had no tertiary degree, and I mean, talk about somebody who just stayed calm and worked hard and kept a good attitude and talked positive. I think that really set my brother and I up to go through and face many giants, looking back at how this single mom with nowhere to go, like, raised us, so.
Wow, that's good. How do you find peace?
Gosh, that for me, I have a tendency to get stressed out and to lose my peace probably easier than he does. And I would say, the best place where I know that I need to go when I do start getting overwhelmed is I just need to go back to his word. That is my peace,
Sure.
And I think, and then also just like, I think gratefulness is really good and big in that too, is just kind of counting the things that we have to be grateful for to shift the perspective.
Yeah. For me, the verse, Romans 8:28, that says that God works out all things for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. That verse, to know that whether I've caused the issue, somebody else has caused the issue, like when we got that lawsuit against us for our name, or I can step back and say, God will work all things out for good. Like that, a loss of peace is believing that something is going to go wrong or bad, or you can't control it or that. And when you know it's going to work out good in the end anyway, it's hard to not have peace, with that.
Yeah.
That's great. If you could sit with your younger self for just a moment, what might you say to them?
Gosh.
Fall in love
would
with that guy
say-
faster.
Sooner?
It's better than you think. Like everything ends up being better than you imagine. I think whether it's a situation or even like a marriage or whatever it is, I would say to my younger self, like, first of all, like, it's going to be okay, but not just okay. Like it ends up being better than you can imagine. Especially when you're doing it the Lord's way.
Yeah, I don't know if I would listen, right? Because things have to be lived to be learned. But I would try to convince myself not to be as hurt by people and realize that, once again, Romans 8:28, like, hey, when these people do these things and that, don't be so hurt and heartache and that. Just take a breath and keep moving.
It's funny because we were at a dinner with one of our friends a few weeks ago, and he made this comment about, you're never going to please everyone. And he said, I don't know if you ever saw this video on YouTube. It went viral of, like, it's just like a cute little chunky baby dancing or something like that. And it had 1 million likes on it, right? But it also had like 10 or 15 thumbs down on it. Like, who doesn't like that, right? Like, so if that cute little baby
Has haters.
like I know I've got lots of haters.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Guys, what is something that you've learned recently that made you stop and kind of see life a little differently?
Gosh, I would say probably more recently, it's just been situations or conversations with my son. It's funny how I remember when my daughter was a teenager, I remember the one day she said to me, Mom, I just want to vent to you. And my son was saying something to me in the car, and my natural tendency as a parent and as an adult is like to correct him or to show him a different perspective and things like that. And I feel like the Lord just reminded me of, my daughter saying, I just want to vent, and just being like, just sometimes let him vent, just let him be himself. And I think that's been a huge learning curve for me, is letting go of my need for control, not to stop being a parent, but my need for control, and just letting him be himself.
Yeah.
It's just a small thing that I think is been big.
I'll tell the story quickly, but we were in Australia and we were lost. We were at the Gold Coast, and we were driving down some road. We were 40 minutes away from where we were supposed to be, and Daniela needed the toilet, and I was pretty frustrated because, I didn't want to be lost. I didn't want to be 40 minutes away from our destination after we had driven for so long. And so I pulled over on the side of the road, and at this random place, and Daniela went into this cafe, and coming out of the cafe were friends that we went to high school with in South Africa.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And
In Australia.
I mean, in Australia, but not just anywhere in Australia, like in Sydney or in like we're out in the bushes, and as I was reflecting on that, it was just a thing of like, we're never lost, firstly. But the other thing is like, just be in that moment, even if it's not the moment you think it should be. Like, that moment has a whole bunch of magic that you can't even imagine if you would just like look for it or wait for it. I think it helps so much, because things hardly ever work out the way we think. And if you're only happy when things work out exactly as you think, like, it's a miserable life.
So true.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
But I just am so taking in all of the things that you shared. Thank you both so much for being with us, being here, having the faith that has you here today. Excited to share about Milk and Honey Ranch, and just grateful for you guys. If our audience wants to connect with you, stay with you, cuddle cows, where's the best place for them to do that?
That's great. Our website, milkandhoneyranch.com. They can book that. And if anybody wants to talk like on a personal level or something like that, they just have to ask, and the team will route those messages, because I don't take it for granted at all. We're not these business tycoons that don't have time to talk to people like we are. We are still very much accessible to everyone. So.
Yeah. Well, you guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. I loved how present you guys are and how that comes across in everything you do. You're living in the moment. This is such a good episode for people to learn from. No matter what situation you're in, just being present and grateful in the moment can take you so far. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate you guys. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for being part of the family today. If you want a closer look at our journey through real life, business, and all the wild adventures, follow us on Instagram at Our Family Invest. And for free resources to help you on your own path, head to ourfamilyinvest.com.
If you like this episode, send it to a friend. And if you're feeling extra generous, drop us a quick review. It really helps us grow this community. Thank you so much for being part of our family today. We really, truly appreciate you.